Hey everyone, Nathan Long here, president of Saybrook University, and welcome to another episode of Saybrook Insights. Over the next few months, I've begun inviting changemakers from across the spectrum to take part in our podcast, including those who have a particular focus on the work we do here at the university, especially from that humanistic perspective or lens. Today's guest is Mr. Mark Sadovnick. As managing partner with the Fifth Element Group, Mark leads with focus on the human element. By engaging with leaders who care, he's able to best represent their clients to attract, develop, and retain the very best talent who are selectively seeking to only join leaders who do care about their financial, physical, and mental well-being, as well as the UN Global Sustainable Development Goals. It's a great tie-in, clearly. There are numerous connections to the importance of identifying the right leaders who fit with the organization's desire to do good in the world, and Mark offers various keen insights about this and many aspects of their work. All right, let's get to it with Mr. Mark Sadovnick. Mr. Mark Sadovnick, really terrific to have you here on our university podcast today. We had the pleasure of getting to know each other a bit more a couple weeks ago during a big theater reopening, grand reopening, really powerful show that we sat through together. But of course, our audience doesn't have the benefit of the coolness factor that is Mark Sadovnick. So maybe for the benefit of them, perhaps you can begin today by giving a short bio of yourself and how you, a recovering accountant, ended up doing this really interesting work with Fifth Element.
Man, you really set me up good for that. The coolness and recovering accountant. What a great introduction. But it's great to be here. And that was a great play, by the way, over there in San Diego. Loved it. So there's two things my partners will tell. There's two things I don't really like to be called, and that's an accountant and an HR person, with all due respect to all those people, because I work with both of them. So the whole scoop is born at the Royal Vic in Montreal back then, a couple years back. And so I grew up in Montreal, which means big hockey fan and Montreal Canadiens hockey fan. And, we kind of joke around saying, we come up with skates on. It really hurts our moms right from the beginning, but we come up with skates on. And then we hit it from there. And went to school at McGill, got my CPA over there, joined Deloitte. At the time, and started out in audit, quickly moved to tax and consulting and so on, and got in trouble a little bit over there. First day on the job, basically I'm sitting there with a great CFO who's super welcome to me, talking about the business, and the partner walks in and says, what are you doing here? And basically he wanted me to, find invoices and add numbers and stuff, but I wanted to learn about the business. So and the CFO was talking to me, so what not, but great experience at Deloitte. Got some of my best influencers came from Deloitte, including telling me I should chill on the sarcasm. Probably not a good idea in what you're doing. And then, do you want me just to share my background?
Yeah.
Got recruited to go to at that time, the largest private real estate developer in Winnipeg, which is about the middle of the country, in case anybody doesn't know, right above Minneapolis. Warm, very warm there in the winter.
So balmy, very balmy. Yes, yes. Isn't that where the Canadian Riviera is, I think?
Well, basically, if it gets down to, if it gets up to 32, we're in convertibles and tank tops, So going skating down the Rideau Canal in Ottawa, which, by the way, I recommend highly. And so got involved with the Winnipeg Jets over there, actually, doing some work. And I also got involved in JC's International, which is a global organization. And interesting thing, which will lead to a little bit more about what we do, is at the same time as working with the Jets, we were bidding for the World Congress of JCs to happen in Winnipeg. And we lost to Taipei in the finals. At the same time, I was offered a dream job working for a pro hockey team with the Jets in a senior marketing role, because I started this big, it's called the Face-Off Club for kids to get exposure to sports, to hockey, to the players, and it worked fantastic. And so I got that. At the same time, I got offered to be the executive director of JC's International at world headquarters in Miami, which sounded really good for thawing out, I'll tell you that. And used to go there, college break a lot of times. I never thought I'd move there. And the only person that told me to take the other job, which was a nonprofit in the States, way less money, and give up my dream job, was the president of the Winnipeg Jets, who offered me the other job. And at first I thought, he's just trying to see if I really want this type of thing. But he was honest and clear and said, Mark, I know you want this. You may or may not be able to come back to hockey. You'll do a great job for us. Otherwise, we wouldn't have offered it. But you're going to travel around the world and meet leaders. It's not about the money. The money will come. You want to take that opportunity and see what's going on out there. So I did, and it was a great influencing moment.
Nice.
For me, and taught me a lot about influencers, and it's important to be one as well. And then I joined JC's down, and I did do that. I met, as my kids would say, I met a lot of great leaders around the world, but also a lot of sucky ones too, to use their term they used to use. And but a great experience, seeing how the world works. And see about leaders who care, which is something we'll talk about. That word kept coming up throughout my career, and then after that, I got into the executive search business. So background's basically highly focused on talent, leadership, and how talent and impact come together. And then so I started after JC, started an executive search firm with a partner. We're together 23 years. And worked with a lot of executives all over the place on finding them the best talent. And again, the one thing I found out was, and stop me whenever you want, because this could go on for hours.
Oh, no, this is good.
When they would ask, well, why aren't we getting the best people? Why aren't we getting this? Why aren't we getting that? What's happening? And so the word care kept coming out, and somebody would say, well, maybe we should just offer them another sick day. Well, that'll do really wonders, giving them another sick day. But then as companies started to listen, and Ryder, big company now, logistics company, they had a lot of young families working there, and there was a lot of stress of kids going home, picking them up, food, real life stuff, but they had to work. And at some points, we had to actually go out of town to bring people in, not just for Ryder, but other companies, because of the rep. And so Ryder did something brilliant. They built a daycare center at headquarters. And as a result, we were able to represent them as, hey, these guys really do care about their employees and what they need, etc. So that the parents can have lunch with their kid. They can use, it's not a matter of driving wherever to pick them up and all that. And a company like Alamo made one of their HR people a head of well-being or wellness at the time. And I remember the Miami Herald, somebody wrote an editorial, just give them a treadmill and a job. They should be happy. But being wellness meant they had to talk to their employees, and even if at that time it was just giving them a gym membership, it was something. And that's not enough anymore because of a lot of reasons, but it was important. And then so that kept happening along the way, and ended up in LA because two of my three boys got noticed for acting and modeling, which was my wife at the time. The modeling part, the acting part's probably me, even though I'm not an actor. But we ended up moving out here because they were doing pretty good, and stayed out in LA, and they're doing fine. As I say, I'm still waiting to get discovered, but they're doing fine, and kept going with executive search. And during that time, I was really pushing the Leaders Who Care, and a short stint at another global firm where they wanted me to build out LA, and I agreed. But they had a problem with the word care. Leaders Who Care. It's too intimate. It's not really business and stuff like that. And the last thing I did with them, I held a global conference here in LA, recognizing companies like Participant Media and the Girl Scouts and leaders, individual leaders who really did care about diversity, innovation, partnerships, things like that. And so I decided to sell that partnership. And then about almost exactly 5 years ago, on International Women's Day, we launched the Fifth Element Group at UN headquarters in New York on the premise that leaders in their businesses can do way better when they do good at the same time. And that's where we are now, and we can talk more about it, but that's the scoop.
Interesting. Let's rewind a bit. You had a lot in there, which is amazing. Talk about your time with the JCs. I mean, I go, this takes me way back. The JCs, you used to run a haunted field or house or something like that when I was a kid. What was that? I've always wondered, what was the JCs all about? What was it like? What was the whole purpose and mission behind it? And how did you get connected with them in the first place to become the, kind of the big cheese, if you will, with the organization?
Okay, great questions. So I was in the JCs initially in Montreal back then as just a volunteer, and it was considered kind of like leadership development, but also a community development type of organization. And I actually got involved with them when I heard the Montreal Canadiens were going to be in a McDonald's. And so I volunteered to go work, to go be there so I could see the Montreal Canadiens. I was like early on. And funny thing was, I was in the back with the hamburgers and fries, and they were in the front with the customers. I don't know why that happened. And I realized my education didn't help me much because I was so confused how long the fries had to be on there and how to put the stuff on the burger and the whole bit. So I really needed leadership development, I guess. And then in Winnipeg, I became the president of the chapter there, and that's when we bid for that World Congress I was telling you about, and actually won the national award for that. It was called the Face Off Club. It was kids being a fan club, basically, for the Winnipeg Jets for kids. And it went super fantastic. And the players, the management were great with them. Again, all along the way, seeing how people are influencing other people and caring about them. And so the JCs really, it's now called junior chamber, but it is a leadership development. There's leadership development programs that they do around the world. They're a little different in some countries. For example, Japan was a little more business professional, whereas in the U.S. it was more casual community. Business professional too, but more casual a lot of times. A lot like the haunted house or whatever, and doing things like that. But the main thing was, and still is, it was a great organization where when we got together, it was like 100 countries in a World Congress and really exchanging ideas and cultures and food and friendships and all the things that are really important and learning from each other. It was, under 40 was the age, which I was well under at that time, and unfortunately now over at this time. So super experience, which is why I go back to that hockey executive that said, that's exactly where you need to go. It's not about the money will come. And just met great people, great friends. And you learn so much when you're organizing events and bringing different cultures together and brainstorming of ideas and how to find solutions and stuff. So the people skills learned were incredible.
I learned something very new today. I had no idea about the JCs, so thank you. Sounds like an amazing organization. So it's now Junior Chamber, is that right?
Yeah, and they moved their headquarters a number of years back to St. Louis, which, all due respect to St. Louis, who's ever listening, this is a great town. But I kind of wish they would have stayed in Miami, a little more international and whatnot. But there was reasons for that. That was after I left, but yeah, great organization. Just it gives people, young people, like I was at the time, still young at heart, but young people at the time, an opportunity to really get exposure and really do stuff. And when I started the Face Off Club, for example, in Winnipeg, I just decided I want to start it. And I got people in the chapter to work on it with me, and we did it.
That's so neat.
A little story, again, that kind of relates to talent. I saw this a while back, must be maybe even 10 years ago. This young man had Santa Claus Parade on the bottom of his resume. And he really thought, he's telling me I don't really have a lot of experience in what I want to do. And I saw the Santa Claus Parade, last line on there. And the reason I recognized it, I was the first Jewish guy in Winnipeg to run the Santa Claus Parade, actually. So, and I said, yeah, the Santa Claus Parade, that's kind of interesting. So you did what you do with that stuff. He said, oh man, you wouldn't believe it. I had to go to the city and get permits and the companies to sponsor. And they would argue where they were in the parade and what happens if it rained and we need this much money and this and that. And I had to do financials and whatnot. And I said, yeah, you don't have any experience at all. You're right. So, you can get your experience in a lot of places.
The Santa Claus Parade is a key learning opportunity. I love it.
Ho, 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 right?
Oh, my gosh. Yes. Yeah, for sure. It's going to be the gift that keeps on giving, no pun intended. So
let's not get started on the dad jokes.
Yeah, I know. Bad. Yeah. So I want to switch over a little bit, kind of connected to all this, to your evolution into executive search. And let me preface this by saying I have been a candidate who's gone through an executive search process, not once, but several times. And I always found it to be fairly, I don't know how to. My one good experience was my one good experience was the placement at Saybrook. I will say that. So, shout out to Carrie Coward at Summit Search in North Carolina. Wonderful. But previous search firms, I always kind of had like a. I'll just be charitable here. It wasn't the most effective experience, and some of the stuff you were talking about that led to the work you're doing now was intriguing to me. So maybe talk a bit about your work in that executive search space for what, 23 years. I mean, that's pretty substantial. um, what worked, what didn't work, what do you think about that level, that part of the industry, especially the process of fielding candidates and the like? I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, well, the thing that I learned even before search, and I learned a lot in sports. I learned a lot that, how the coach can get the players to be beyond even what they think they can do and how to stretch them, and how believing in a player is the biggest, best thing a player loves to do anything for that coach, no matter what. And so I learned that it's really more about experiences and accomplishments, not instead of or over, and the other's not important, but more importantly, over qualifications, if you will. Um, you can always find qualifications for the most part. And more it's become that what are the skill sets, what are the actual experiences that a person brings forward to the next opportunity that they're looking at that makes it a right fit. And we talk about right fit culture ad. Not to go too far different directions, but right fit culture ad to me is really important, because right fit a lot of times just means you're like the people that are there, you fit in there. It's got to be more than that, especially with everything going on with diversity now. It's got to be right fit culture add to it. And it's not rocket science. Culture add will be better for it the same way diversity is better for it. And so a few things have to happen when we take on a client, and hopefully we can talk about it. We look to take on leaders who care as our clients, and we ask them, what do they care about? A lot of it's centered around the sustainable development goals, which pretty well covers a lot of different areas. But what do they care about? And whether it's diversity, do they care about innovation? Do they care about water? So, what do they care about that's important? And do they care about the well-being of their talent? Because we need proof when we're representing them to talk about them in a great way. We're branding that client when we're out there, whether they like it or not. So it's a really important decision, not just to get the best person, but their reputation's on the line, as is ours, when we're talking to candidates. In that, going to your experience as a candidate, that's also critical, because 99.9% of the people that we talk to that are referred to us, recommended to us as candidates, are not looking for jobs only. They're looking for opportunities. And they will ask questions, and should ask questions. And I find this especially with women, minorities, and whatnot, beyond the job, are they going to be able to be involved in major projects and get and potentially fail and recover and get recognition and stuff like that? But during the process, more importantly to what you're referring to, they need to have a good experience for all sorts of reasons. Number one, if you give them a good experience, you'll have more of a chance of having an acceptance if that's the person you offer the job to. And you got to give them a good experience, number one, because it's the right thing to do. They are people. Number two, because you don't know who yet you're going to make an offer to. And you can't wait till the end of the process to all of a sudden be nice to somebody and expect them to just accept. They're looking at this opportunity from the minute you start talking to them, the minute you bring them into an office, etc. So there's an experience there that's really important. And another thing that's important with that is, even though the client is the company hiring, we look at the candidate as a client too. It's got to be a fit for both people, both parties. Otherwise, it's not going to work out. So who does that help? Part of it is also coaching to have a more effective interview process. So, for example, we'll have candidates, for their own benefit, identify what they think their differentiating core competencies are. What really makes them different? Because if it's a great opportunity, we present, a more than one person, obviously, and there's going to be more people applying to a particular job, whether it's a search firm or not. So they're going to a lot of times say the same stuff that's related to the job. But what really differentiates them core competency wise, and getting around full circle here, what are their experiences and accomplishments that prove it? And telling stories, as you know, are things people remember. And if you can tell a story that relates to what your experiences were, even if it's this problem came up, we messed up, this is how we handled it and solved it and moved on, and how the team worked together. And it's a combination of I did this and the team did this and we did this that you've got to talk about. Then that person has a way better chance of as the athlete, as the sports player, of playing in this game beyond what they think they can even play, to really score the goal, the touchdown, win, and feel good about themselves. They did their absolute best on it. The most important about that is the client also gets a more effective interview. It's not like we're telling the person what to say. We're getting the right information from that person to come out to the client hiring, and the client is being represented on who they are for real, beyond just the job. Like, we have a daycare center. The reason we built a daycare center is we understand your family has things to do. We want to take care of you. Stuff like that. We have a well-being program, not just membership in a gym where you might feel uncomfortable going to the gym if your boss is there because you're whatever, not in shape yet or something, but stuff that really works. Which is why we talk about financial well-being, physical well-being, and mental well-being with all our candidates and with the client. That helps attract and make it, the right fit. So the other thing we do that's important, again, for both sides, is that when the process is over, the right thing to do is give every candidate feedback as to what went on. Like, what did you do great? What did you screw up on, basically? Sometimes it's really hard when you get down to the finals. I just had that we just did a search for the chief executive officer of the National Women's History Museum. Perfectly completed right in, this is the month of the Women's Month or whatever.
Right.
But there were two other finalists that we had to say they didn't get it. And super disappointed, which they should be if they're the right candidates. And, but, you want to come back with feedback. Sometimes they did nothing wrong and you just have to pick somebody, but they deserve feedback so that the next time maybe they did make a mistake and they can do better the next time. For the client's sake, if you will, a reputation, it's important to complete with every single person that we had a touch point with. Some of them a short touch point, some of them a more touch point, for all the same reasons. Again, and not to sound corny, but it's the right thing to do that. It is about caring about their people, they have families, etc. And by the way, that's not so bad for business either if you care about people. They remember. And one of my favorite quotes, especially in this industry, is Maya Angelou, who said that at the end of the day, most people will forget what you said. Most people will forget what you've done, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And it's true. And I'm not in her class, but if you add to that, if they remember you because how you made them feel, there's a good chance they might remember what you did and what you said also. And so it really works well that way. And there's another quote, you'll never work a day in your life if you love what you do. So if you really care about people, it's so much easier to do stuff. And, a quick example. I was at a donut pastry shop the other day, and there was two ladies behind there. One was super friendly, happy. The other one was frowning the whole time. It's an experience, right? But I'm thinking, if you're there already and you have to be there, why not just be happy in the meantime and take care of somebody and be nice? So hope that answers the question.
No, very well. And boy, the feedback loop is so very critical, I think, for candidates, that so many places get that wrong and do it really terribly. For any executive search firms that may be listening, I don't know why you would, but if you are listening to this show, that's the way to do it. Because I think, even when we're hiring internally without a search firm, my mandate to the staff is we reach out to all candidates to at least let them know what happened, where things are at in the process. There are certain rules that prevent us in policies, procedures about getting too detailed. That's why you have a search firm a lot of times to provide even more in-depth feedback. But I really applaud you in that and the team that you're doing. So that takes me to leaders who care. So I'm going to ask. It's probably not a hard question for you because you already get the idea and embrace this notion of authenticity. But when you say care, there's a couple things that come up for me. One is
Hugging, right? You're thinking of hugging, right?
no, 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 no. I'm good. I'm actually good with hugging. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm actually. I feel like with the kind of when you say leaders who care, it's you're solving for a problem, and basically it's saying, well, there are a lot of leaders out there who really don't care, who don't give a damn about whatever it is, and at the end of the day, business is about running a business, right? So whether it's a nonprofit, a for-profit, some have different cultures that embrace a more caring ethos, a more authentic, orientation. But at the end of the day, they've got to run a business, and so that ethos of caring that you bring up in leaders who care is kind of an interesting thing that you're saying. Okay, we have a problem here. On the flip side, so it's a yin yang, both and kind of thing.
Right.
Then you have this issue of okay, don't leaders already care? I mean, at the end of the day, I care about. I don't show up to Saybrook at the university and go, boy, I can't wait to fail, or I can't wait to hurt someone's feelings over a performance issue, or I can't wait to do X, Y, and Z that may be negative. I'm really striving to do and be my best, right, for my team, for our university. So it's not a conflict. Those things just are brewing in my brain when you say leaders who care. So I guess the Mark Sadovnick, what is that ultimately? You kind of you did describe it earlier, but kind of dig underneath that a little bit and talk about what motivated the adoption of the title, what really drove the development of it, and what you see as its value to businesses and organizations in general.
You really summarized that well. Because like a previous firm I had, they thought care was too intimate and we shouldn't be talking about that. And my answer to that was, man, if you think that's something, wait till I start. We're using the word love. You're going to go crazy.
Yeah.
We all have heard of soft skills becoming more and more important, for leaders. And I interviewed a CEO a little while back that said he's having the best time being a CEO ever because he doesn't have to pretend to be in a perfectly unbelievable good mood all the time, and he doesn't have to pretend he knows everything anymore also. He just has to show that he cares and respects the people that are working with him to do the best they can do. And just recently, I've interviewed 2 women leaders that have echoed that same thing. If we show how much we trust and care about our employees, the people we work with, they perform better every single time. It came out with the whole remote stuff even more, where leaders were forced to trust people because they weren't under their eye in the office. They were at home, hoping, I sure hope they work. I hope they're working. I don't know what they're doing over there. But if that was the time to really say, I trust you over there getting it done. And then you know what? Most people, you can never generalize everybody, most people say, man, he really does believe in me. And I'll give you a little hockey analogy. Mark Messier, who some people might know or not know, one of the top leaders ever in sports, played pro hockey. Big guy, solid. He talked about how once he was with the Edmonton Oilers, they were winning championships, and he went up to one guy in his face and said, look, I remember the guys, look, Bill, we really need you on this team. We really care about you being part of this team. We know you can help us win, but I need to know that you're in this 150%, or if not, it's all good, you can leave. And the guy hearing that heard, holy cow, he really believes in me. He really cares that I'm a big part of this team. And God, how do I let that guy down? I don't want to leave something like that. And so he stayed, and they won the championship. Doesn't guarantee you win a championship every time, but as another hockey executive told me, our mandate every year, our goal every year is to win the Stanley Cup, the championship in hockey. Our mandate is to have a winning season every year. And that means everybody down to the secretary and the usher in our organization has to be happy here and motivated, and like when they go home, they're happy of where they came from. So that's one part. With respect to business, it's taken a long time. I don't know if you remember, there was a time there that CEOs, I won't use the word, CEOs had to be real so-and-sos, and that's what they thought a great COO was, to be so-and-so and so.
The Jack Welch kind of model of leadership. Yeah.
Yeah, the time manager of the year that now people are talking, maybe not the time manager of the century or whatever it was. So, what we found is that the leaders that can show how they care, it's not just talking, I care about you. My door is always open. Who has the programs? For example, one that we talked about recently, non-conflict program. It's a program on how to resolve conflict within a company. If I'm a candidate, any candidate, but unfortunately, especially a woman or minority, and they're choosing between two companies, and one actually has a process in hand of how to resolve conflict, and the other one says we do, I'm going to go with the one that actually committed a process to try to handle it, and they have something for it. If they have a well-being program, if they have a confidential, I can speak to somebody program, if they're putting things in place that really make a difference for people, not just the gym membership, but real concrete stuff. If they've shown that they're advancing people within the organization, diverse people within the organization, they have proof of it, they really do care. And if they show that they're not just doing that because of whatever it is, their race, this, that, but because they performed, they really do care. So it's a combination of things you put in play that are important, and it's also things you do. So I was talking once. He's a Canadian senator now. This fellow Tony. He was the vice chairman, Royal Bank of Canada, and he's told me the story. I love it. He said he has his reports as much as possible every day. Go by the offices of people that report to them. Don't stand at the door and say, hey, I hope all is good. Go sit down for 2 minutes, not more, because you got to respect the time. They have a lot of work to do, but for 2 minutes saying, how you doing? And the difference between sitting there for 2 minutes or saying it at the end of the door is huge as to how much you care. And it's also huge that you didn't spend a half an hour just talking and wasting time also.
Yeah.
So little things, generally the little things make the biggest difference. The last thing I guess I'll say is I'll give you one more example. And I'll leave the company name out, but it's a big real estate company, and they put in a concierge program into their company. And at one point, one guy moved into a new house. He's got a lot of projects going on. He found that he's got bees all over the place in the back of his house. With the concierge thing, they called up a bee company. They went out and handled it. They were showing their employees that their time is valuable. They want them to have more time with their family, not worrying about when they went home they had to do this and this and this and this, but they would have time with their family when they went back home. So it was a value of their personal time that showed that they really cared about them. It wasn't like you can do more work now because of that. It was the personal time that they took care of stuff like that. The ROI is huge.
Yeah, it's big.
Because we are human, and you've probably seen this, and they've done studies that the number one thing they found that fills people's hearts and souls more than anything in the world is belonging. Whether it's a sports team, a department in a company, a faculty, whatever, we're wired that we want to belong. Since we're little kids, we're wired. When you're on the playground and you're picking teams, pick me. Come on. So there you go.
So this is all very, very cool. I mean, I've already got a few things in my head. Like here are some tweaks to my own process and practice that I can take to my own or put in place in my own leadership style. I do have a question though for you, kind of on the metrics side, and yeah, I know it's metrics and blah, but still,
It's important.
it is important. And I think when you talk to companies who you're recruiting for or recruiting to be part of what you're doing with Leaders Who Care and Fifth Element, what do you say to them? Like, we measure success of X, Y, and Z, and this is how you know what we do is successful and how our leaders who are recruited are successful. What are those metrics? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I'll say a couple of things on that. So we give a year guarantee when we place a person that if it doesn't work out for a year, we'll replace that person. That's a long time. Hardly ever happens because the process works of making sure that's the right fit. So partially how they we measure it and they measure it is how is that person advancing. When we do recruit, part of the conversation with the candidate is what are the company's expectations for the first 6 months, 12 months, a year or two, and then you measure were those met by that candidate, why or why not, and we keep in touch with our clients again because it's the right thing to do. It's also good business to keep in touch with your clients. And so we're measuring, and we've had clients that say, I think he can really do it, but I don't know. And it very rarely happens, but it might be at the day before the guarantee's over, and they want to know what should they do, and we would say, forget the guarantee period. Do you want to see if this guy will work out or gal? And they said, well, I think he can, but we need more time. Well, of course we're going to give you more time. We're not going to say you only have a day left in the guarantee. First of all, that's stupid. And second of all, not to be cute, that shows we care about their business and making it work. So those are some measurements right there about how are they advancing. There's also programs that can be put in on well-being that help the person advance, as well, if you will, by growing their department, or have they been sharing it with their department? Are they allowing people in their department to move up to another position, or are they preventing them from doing that because they want to keep that person? And measuring what that looks like. There's sick days that can be measured. If the person's well-being is taken care of, you can actually see sick days going down. You can actually see more participation of things happening. You can even see through the employee how the family's doing, because when they go home, there's a little bit of sidetrack, but it's important, and I'll get into impact in a minute. When an employee goes home, you got your spouse or your partners go home, there's two things that can happen. They can say, oh, man, my job sucks. My boss doesn't talk to me. I don't even know what I'm doing. Give me a beer. I'm going to sit on the sofa. Kids hear that. Or, guys, let's get together. Let's grab something to eat together. I got to tell you what happened at work today. And my boss and this and that. I might get a bonus for this. And we're doing something in food security next week that I'm really psyched about, and so on. So if employees are getting engaged, then that's also a good measurement. How much they're getting engaged in what the company's doing, business-wise and impact-wise, is another metric as to how successful your employee, your talent acquisition, your development, and your retention is happening. The part I want to say about impact that we do at Fifth Element is these aren't all silos. Let's say you place a CFO. It's not the CFO over here, the CMO over here, the chief people officer over here. It's like one company that works together. Who you're hiring, how you're hiring them. Some of that is impacted by the marketing department. Some of that is impacted, what the financial guys do sometimes impacts supply chain. So when we work with clients, we talk to them and they retain us on how to maximize the impact they want to have on their business economically, on their employee engagement, on their community engagement, maybe the world globally that they're doing, and how do we get employees involved in that? And we can actually measure, it could be anything from, we worked with one big company who wanted to get water to the rural areas of India. Another one that's doing, workforce development, hiring untapped talent, people that have been previously incarcerated. All different things that we can help them with their impact on, that impacts, if you will, their talent development and talent acquisition. And you can measure the impact that they're having in a lot of different ways. And we even can measure the impact we're having by helping their impact, if you will, in that respect. So impact and talent totally come together, and there's a lot of metrics in there to show that.
That's great. Quite a bit there, and I'd love to pick your brain in another episode or offline about all of that, because I think there's a lot to dig into there. We have very limited time here as we close out. Really great stuff that you're talking about, Mark. Last big question, I think, and we just have a couple minutes on this one. So we're in a moment, as you know, right now. I mean, it's kind of a sticky situation nationally. It is super divisive across our nation, even our world, frankly, right? We've got all sorts of global threats and challenges. In addition, we're dealing with the massive economic instability that's impacting so many, even though we're told it's not really a problem, but it kind of is. It isn't, but who knows? And then you've got the national racial reckoning that we're going through right now, including the lashback you're seeing in places like Florida and Texas, and people loggerheads over any kind of progress. In your mind, how can organizations and businesses walk the talk in advancing progress across these challenges and do so authentically? And maybe they don't, but I'm just curious from your perspective as a leaders who care kind of concept, what does that look like?
It is a hard time. There's no doubt about it. And you don't want to sound like you have the simplistic solution to it.
Yeah.
It's got to start with, again, not to be cute, it's got to start with almost a smile to another person and just be open to hearing and listening, really actively listening to what they're saying. There's a difference between actively listening and just listening for your comeback, for when you're going to make a comeback, because then you're not really listening. It's two different things. The other thing I think is, if you can get back to that, there's an expression I like too, clear is kind. I think the clearer we are with each other, the kinder we are with each other. If we're not clear and it's ambivalent, you go away and then you start thinking and you're wondering, oh, did they have an agenda, or what's going on, or I didn't get this, or didn't get that, and I don't know what my expectations are at work, or whatever, and all that. It's really important, and it also applies to, very much so, to people of color, women, etc. Really good people don't want to be hired because they're that. They want to be hired because they're great. It doesn't mean we all don't think about who we are when we're going into something like that. But people want to be respected by being told the truth about everything. Whether it's you're hiring somebody and I tell Jane, I love this and this and this and this, I'm concerned about this, let's talk about it. Or if you're evaluating somebody in a company for advancement, being really clear that you are looking to have diversity in your company, but being really clear with them that that's a factor. It's there. It's not being truthful to say it's not. However, let's talk about what your strengths are, what your core competencies are, how we can put you in a position to win. Because sometimes, even as things like onboarding people, if I'm being onboarded, a white Canadian Jewish guy, that's different than a black woman from the United States being onboarding. Even for the same job, it's different. So the clearer we are, the better we are. And I think you just have to have, it's not easy. You have to have programs that, whether it's something like Nonflict or if there's mental illness, we have a client, Trauma Free World, they coach trauma. You have to have programs to help people. There's issues all over the place of mental health, and we have to slowly but surely be getting rid of that stigma, I think. But again, we have to be clear, to be kind, and give people the space to be able to share what's going on with them. Because at the end of the day, again, not to be cute, we got to care about each other more.
Yeah.
We all want the same thing. One last quick thing. We work globally. This isn't a big revelation, but most people around the world want the same thing.
And I appreciate the framing too. Clear is kind, and the active listening piece. I think so many of us think we do a good job at that, but I check myself on that regularly too. Like, I think I'm a good listener, but then I catch myself. I'm kind of fast forwarding through the conversation to say, this is the point I need to get across. And that takes me out of the position, whether it's an issue of or around a conflict I'm having with an employee or a student or a whatever, or just a conversation, and or community conversations, right? Where we need to do a lot more of that active listening and being clear in our intentions and our focus. I think you framed that beautifully. So we gotta wrap up. I wish we could keep going. I know these are two quick take questions, so it's got to be quick. It's got to be like off the tip of your tongue, quick, and then I give you a grade. So and usually it's an A. So everyone wins. Everyone gets a ribbon. So
Omni win.
it's the Stanley Cup of Saybrook University. So what does the term humanistic mean to you?
It means caring about another person.
That's perfect.
Do I have a little more time to answer, or
I'll give you 30 more seconds. Go for it.
it means showing you care, respecting another person, listening to another person, truly being open to what that other person is saying, and hearing where they're coming from, whether it's a past of 50 years or it's the morning they had an argument with their spouse. There's something usually going on, so it's really being empathetic to that and caring.
I'll give you an A on that one, Mr. Sadovnick. Fabulous. The last question, and this is a big one. Our audience members, I get feedback on this. They love this. This is kind of the packaged in a bow, 3 major takeaways that you have for, with everything that's going on in the world, good, bad, and indifferent. But there's so much to think about with health, wellness, mental well-being. What is the Mark Sadovnick 3 takeaways for individuals to do something powerful to improve their mental, physical, or emotional well-being?
Damn. The 3 things to improve your mental, physical, and emotional well-being. Don't sit at the computer all day. Go outside and check out the sun and breathe it in, or the ocean where I'm at. Hug your spouse, your partner, your friend, your family as much as you can, because you never know what's going to happen the next day. And think about doing something really simple. Like I said, like my grandfather said, just smile at someone and say, "Hey, how's it going?" that you don't know, and see what happens.
Mark Sadovnick, you put a perfect cap on a fabulous episode. Real quick, where can people find you and Fifth Element on the web?
They say in LA, if you keep them wanting more, you can have a sequel. So there you go. Fithelement.group, www.fithelement.group, 5th.group, or on LinkedIn, you can find me. We have a Leaders Who Care series. Check out a lot of the leaders that we've interviewed around the world that are talking about why they're doing better personally, their families, and their businesses because they care.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate you being here.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Mark, thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed Mark as much as I did. Remember his 3 major takeaways. Get up from that computer after sitting all day. Go out, smell the world around you. Really enjoy the space. Really enjoy the sun or the rain or the snow, wherever you may be. But really embrace that opportunity to get up and experience your world. Hug your family and friends. Take that time to express kindness and love. And third, think about doing something really simple that can have an easy but important impact. If you want to see the video version of this podcast, please visit our Saybrook YouTube page. If you'd like to support the podcast, go to Apple iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and review, and subscribe so you can get episodes as they come out. If you're on Spotify, leave that 5-star rating and make sure to follow us. You can, of course, subscribe to us on most major podcast platforms, including Google, Stitcher, Pandora, and others. Remember to check our show notes for information on today's guests, including links to websites, books, etc. For more about our university, go to www.saybrook.edu, click on Areas of Study at the top of the page, and locate the program of your choice to learn more. Or simply Google Saybrook University. You'll find us, I guarantee it. That's it, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today.